knock knock, it's Knuckles.
You know, whenever Sonic frees his animal friends, he never considers the fact that they might prefer the moving tin cans they were in. Who knows, one of them might see the Badnik and say, hey, I bet that looks cool. Why am I saying this? That's because for those animals, Sonic is a jerk because he robs them of that experience. Unfortunately, Dr. Eggman is still there, so we need to take him down. Without taking out a Badnik. If this sounds familiar, it's inspired by Nathaniel Bandy's Mario videos where he has to touch every single coin, so check out those videos, they'll be linked down below. So, that brings me to this question that I have for you. Is it possible to beat Sonic 1 without defeating a Badnik? Let's find out. Before we continue, I need to lay some ground rules. Rule number 1, I cannot defeat a Badnik, well, which is actually a no-brainer, so I need to elaborate on what it means to defeat a Badnik. I cannot make contact with a Badnik to where an animal will be released and where I can earn points. I'll get into the specifics later. Number 2, I am only allowed to fight Dr. Eggman. Since he's not a Badnik, I do need to progress beyond Green Hill Zone Act 3. Rule number 3, if I defeat a Badnik, I must restart the level. I could use a checkpoint, but I want to see if I can do it all in one run. This means I'll be using the game's level select code due to the limited lives. With the rules established, let's begin. We start the game in Green Hill Zone, and in the beginning is your normal run through the game with a few stops for enemies to disappear, or to avoid taking unnecessary damage. After that, there will be this incline that ends with a spring. Rather than taking a risk and encountering a Buzz Bomber, I took the bottom route. After a close encounter with a Motobug, I made it through the first loop, the S tunnel, and then upon exiting it, I immediately jumped to avoid more Buzz Bombers and then make it to knock out a Badnik. Okay, so I kind of rushed myself on this one. So after a reset, I take the same route, avoided the neutrons, and at the end, there it is. Level finished, let's move on. Act 2 is more or less the same thing, but I decided to take the high route. The first true obstacle doesn't appear until the area with the rising and lowering platforms with these spike pits. You have to avoid the Buzz Bomber projectiles. I managed to pass the first one because the platform was large enough to evade the attack. The second one appears as you are on a moving platform. After screwing up the first time, I made it hoping that I don't land on a spike because I'm playing the 1.0 version. Once you make it past the Buzz Bomber, it's smooth sailing to the end goal. I tackled Act 3 by sticking to the low route when I made it to the S tunnel. I decided to hold left so that way I don't have the surprise encounter with the Badnik. I'm going for safety on this one. After that is this bed of spikes with a swinging platform over it, and I wanted to take a safer route, so I jumped between the spikes. Brilliant strategy. One more attempt and I make it to Eggman, not before I take an ungodly amount of time to get the invincibility and avoid triggering enemies from spawning. 8 hits later, and Eggman has been defeated onto Marble Zone. If you thought Marble Zone was slow in normal gameplay, waiting on these caterpillars will bore you to death. Thankfully, waiting for the right moment will make them not that annoying, for now. A lot of the stage is just waiting on caterpillars, Buzz Bombers, and these Bat Brains. The issue with the Bat Brains is that they can stop and fly towards Sonic again, so getting them off screen is the best strategy. A little bit of platforming and waiting, and Act 1 is complete. Act 2 is where I hit my first big obstacle. At first, it appeared to be incredibly easy, like Act 1, some platforming, avoid the Bat Brains, and then this happens. I make it to this little corridor where there are 2 caterpillars. Due to how short this was, jumping over it was not happening at the time. I'll get into that in a bit. Either I was going to defeat the Badnik or take damage by hitting the body of it. My first idea was to wait for both of them to get closer to the end with the spring. Maybe it'll be possible to jump over both of them. Sadly, it wasn't. Sonic's large sprite meant that I would either hit the corner or the Badnik. So then I gave it some time and really tried coming up with a strategy to get around these buggers. Wait, buggers? Okay, fine, it's in the script. Buggers. I resorted to abusing the invincibility frames by intentionally taking damage and running through them. Unfortunately, the caterpillar's body will detach and scatter, even if the body's touched by Sonic and his invincibility frames. Okay, next idea. Take the hit and jump right before I hit the body, and it will lead to defeating the enemy. This is the point where I had to make the choice to define what defeating a Badnik meant. Yeah, remember that rule from earlier in the video? I cannot make contact with a Badnik to where an animal will be released and where I can earn points. This is the reason why I had to make the rule the way it was. Without it, this is a dead end. Okay, so as I was writing this segment of the video, I decided to give it another shot. With the spaces between the caterpillars, I thought of trying a well-timed series of jumps with a running start, and it worked. Damn. And it works! After that is more of the same thing. Even with the section of the spikes and caterpillars, there is sufficient space to get through and finish the level. I'll keep the definition of defeating an enemy in case I need it in the future. On a side note, I played this level enough to actually have a fast route through it and it looked really cool. Act 3 is more like Act 1 where it's just waiting and platforming and 2 mistakes. The enemies aren't a bother, 1 boss later, and we're done here. Honestly, there really isn't much to mention here. Spring Yard Zone, Act 1 starts us off with quite the curveball. There are these 3 crab meats and 2 buzz bombers at the very beginning of the level. The only way to make it through them is to take damage and make sure there's enough room to jump. Surprisingly, I actually did this on my first attempt. After that, there are these 2 springs, and I did my absolute best to not roll so that way I didn't run into anything that was spawning. However, I kind of had to, just so that way I can have enough speed to make it over. Then, the high route is key into running to very little enemies, mostly because the rollers would be a nightmare to deal with. Once you take the high route, it's easy mode. Act 2 is more or less the same. If anything, the spikes, no, not those ones, are a huge help for whenever I need to take damage. I take the high one until these bumpers kind of give me a spring in my step, but then one bad pun later and I come across this spring and completely ignore it. A little further down, I take the high route from then on, and the level is basically over. Another walk in the park. Act 3, and hey, I finally get to do one of these segments because it's actually forced in this level. Then after taking some damage to go onto a platform, which is not necessary by the way, I come across a very familiar setting. It reminds me of the Caterkillers, but so much easier since the crab meats are in their place. After I encountered it and screwed up, I wondered if it was possible to take a higher route, and it would work, but Sonic is not fast enough to completely make it. I'm impatient, so I went back to the tiny area with the crab meats and I just took the hit, and hey, this thing again! I get to the giant half-pipe? Honestly, I don't know what to call these things, and I should have taken the speed shoes and invincibilities because there's not an enemy in sight until the very end. Eggman fight, and we're done. Labyrinth Zone. Frick. If you thought this was easy mode leading up to this, this is where it ends. These things are Borobots, and they suck. They can jump out of the ground, turn around, and go right back to Sonic, and on top of that, they jump at random times. I'll just say this, patience and luck. Oh, and don't drown, we're still in Labyrinth Zone. This is where abusing the damage invincibility is a must, and I quickly learned how to approach them, but it took some time. After goofing on the shortcut, I went down the main route. Everything looked great until I got to the end, and damn it. A few more tries, and Act 1 is done. Act 2 introduces Orbinauts, the Unidasu version, and they're just as much of a waiting nightmare as the Caterkillers, if not worse. It's interesting to play this and not want to get the invincibility and just steamroll over everything. Again, drowning becomes a more real hazard in this playthrough than any other standard one. More abusing invincibility, and holy crap, that one went through the wall. Platforms on conveyor belts, and the act is over. Act 3. I hate this one so much. Let's get this out of the way. I'm going through the shortcut. Everything goes perfectly fine, until I come across this. These 3 Borobots are annoying enough as it is, but after going into the water, there are 2 more to deal with. This is the most luck-based scenario I've ever had to deal with in this entire run. I thought about the standard route, but that's not happening. Thankfully, there is a shield that is a necessary item to make it through this little portion of the level. And then, oh no, air bubble, air bubble, air bubble! Okay, that was a little close. After that, avoiding the spike ball, and then the final climb out of this labyrinth hell. But they do have Borobots, so I had to be very careful. I thought the water was going to rise and I would be doomed from the start, but no, it will wait. Hold on, I need to get that shield. Okay, let's go. After the infamous Eggman chase, Act 3 is over, and thank goodness I never have to do this again. I'm finally free from this crap. Let's go to Starlight Zone. Honestly, I could summarize Starlight Zone as a cakewalk. Every enemy will do damage if I jump into them immediately. These bombs and Uni versions of the Orbinauts are the only real threat to the zone. The only actual challenge is not getting knocked into a pit. I'd like to say this is where my skills are really put to the test, but no, it's just a standard Sonic 1 run. This is the same pleasant ride through this awesome looking zone with beautiful music to accompany it that it always has been. Even the Orbinaut in Act 3 is nothing when you let the bombs explode off screen. Aside from that, Act 3 is the most fun since I was allowed to go as fast as I can in this one section. Because hitting an enemy won't destroy them, I'll just take the damage. No harm, no foul. After that, you fling some bombs, or yourself, into Dr. Eggman, and, well, I'm a little underwhelmed, but I'm honestly a little relieved. The entire zone had enemies I couldn't destroy immediately. I still love it, so let's move on. Scrap Brain Zone is more of a test of platforming rather than constantly evading enemies. I don't think I encountered 10 Badniks on this entire act. Then again, the high route is the best route. The only tricky enemy placement are these ball hogs that can ruin a run. Unless you take damage immediately and jump in the space between them. But once you do that, Act 1 is finished. Believe it or not, but Act 2 is even easier. I mean, it's still stress-inducing with these things that will crush you, but with Badniks, there were even less. Yeah, the route I took had very little enemy encounters. The high route, once again, is ideal, and I thought I had to get past this ball hog, but no. I can completely avoid it, and Act 2 is done. We're on the home stretch. By the way, Scrap Brain Zone Act 3 is basically Labyrinth Zone Act 4. There, I said it. Once again, I'm taking the shortcut because the amount of level hazards makes this level difficult to play through normally. Imagine trying to take the standard route, which is why I will always take an opportunity to encounter less enemies. I was doing my best to avoid these burrow bots and kept screwing up the jump that might have been the safer route to take, but I still managed. After that, I'm in the last area of the act. Set off the burrow bot so I can get to the air bubble, then get through the spiky cluster, and that's the final obstacle. I finally made it. At last, the deed is done, and I can finally have my bout with Dr. Egg. Crap. Let's do that again. Now I can have the final bout. And it's at this point that even if I don't fight Dr. Eggman, the run is over. Is it possible to beat Sonic 1 without defeating a Badnik? The answer is yes. Going through this whole thing was not as brutally difficult as I was expecting, for the most part. It's mostly a time-consuming effort, but with some critical thinking, even the most difficult challenges can be figured out. It takes an action-filled platformer and almost makes it kind of a puzzle, requiring more thought than just a run in and good luck, and it also requires a lot of memorization. After conquering Sonic 1, I received plenty of comments regarding other classic games, Sonic 2, Sonic CD, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and Sonic Mania. Challenge accepted. So we're here with Sonic 2. I have made it obvious in the past that I dislike this entry in the series because I'm very big on enemy placement, and around the halfway point, it gets very questionable. With Sonic 2, we have a new character with Miles Tails Prower, and the original idea was to go through the game as Sonic and then as him, but it seemed like I'd be repeating the same playthrough since there isn't much difference between the two with the exception of height. So one playthrough it is. We're gonna go with the same rules as previous games, though I did have to make some adjustments to it. I'll get into that much later in the video. Rule number 1, I cannot defeat a Badnik, which means attacking it and releasing the animal inside. Rule number 2, I must fight the bosses to continue the game. So anytime I hear, it's go time. And number 3, if I defeat a Badnik, I must restart the level. So once again, I will be using the level select because there is no save feature in Sonic 2. Unless I play the mobile ports. The reason I'm doing that is because I would like to stick with the 4:3 aspect ratio. I think it'll give me a better challenge. So that's the reason why I go with the original releases rather than the 16:9 aspect ratio remaster. Now that the rules are set, let's begin. Oh, and by the way, I'm using Sonic and Tails. Let's go! Emerald Hill Zone Act 1 starts as a standard run, with the only challenge coming from these bridges with the 2 mashers on it. Thankfully, there are 2 ways to approach this. I can either walk between the enemies and wait for them to go under the bridge to walk to the other side, or I can make a really well-timed jump over both of them. Fortunately, I did both and realized that walking would actually be the safer choice, so Tails never has to jump. Bottom route helps out a lot, and Act 1 is over. There really isn't too much to this one. Act 2 is still the same, but since I can safely cross the bridge, I damage boost my way to keep Tails on the ground. Then I run headfirst into this coconut. Believe it or not, I run into this enemy projectiles in standard runs, so it feels normal to me. The lowest possible route is ideal until you get to this corkscrew bridge. You can just go forward and you'll be at the first boss encounter, 8 hits, and the boss is done. Chemical Plant Zone Act 1 doesn't have many enemies with the right path, so I just went forward, and then after this loop, I jumped over the red spring and came across these 2 moving blocks. I chose the damage boost through the spiny because Tails likes to jump at random points. After that, I carefully jump into the tube so I can get to the end of the level. Act 2 was more of the same. After running into 0 enemies and weird collision, I stopped myself on this slope to take the higher path. There's absolutely nothing here, so I went through the level normally. My plan is to take the secret route to avoid any more enemies. There, I grab the invincibility to cheese the Dr. Eggman fight, and die. One more try and the level is over. Thank goodness Tails didn't try to troll me. Aquatic Ruin is an interesting one. For most of Act 1, I chose to take the high route. I jumped over a grounder and had a damage boost through this group so I can get to the grounder and the 2 wisps. Not those wisps. Then, accidentally hit a Chop Chop. Okay, new plan. Take the middle route that leads to the top path and take an unnecessary damage boost. I made the choice to jump onto another platform, which will put me in a new plane. After a surprise from the grounder, it seems to have gone really far off screen because I saw it again and jumped over it. Then it's the last bit until the goalpost. Act 2. Yikes. So in the beginning, there are 2 options. Stay above the water or risk drowning. So I went for the top route. Not even 5 seconds in, and Tails hits an enemy. Tails off screen is more of a concern because he'll either spin dash or jump to catch up to Sonic. I managed to get Tails on the moving platform that I've been struggling to make progress with. I chose to drop to the lower route to avoid losing a life and having to start over. As I was about to drown, I accidentally hit a Chop Chop. At least Tails drowned. So I said screw it, took the bottom route, and let Tails drown again. He never returned, so I now have this somewhat easier time going through until I took damage. Then, the arrows happened. This is not going well. The next attempt was very promising. I had everything timed so well until the damn grounder makes a return. Let's quickly go through the rest of the attempts. I drowned, Tails quickly killed an enemy, and for good measure, killed the other one nearby. Tried the platforms at the beginning, was crushed. This. Then I finally got near the end of the level, only to get taken out by a wisp. Then I make it back only to get greedy and go for a life that I really didn't need. In hindsight, it made no sense. After all that, nearly an hour of trial and error, I made it to Dr. Eggman. Now that it's over, I never have to do this again. Casino Night Act 1 wasn't too bad. It was a bunch of bouncing around and only encountering one enemy. And I also had this one scary encounter. For the most part, I took the bottom route that led to moving higher. It seems like a lot of bouncing around and then the level is over. Act 2's beginning is designed so you never have to get close to the crawl. There is some platforming, followed by a risk. I take the speed shoes and make a few jumps a lot easier. Even when I come close to this enemy, there is still a safe way out of that area. After some interesting physics play and some more bouncing around, we get to Dr. Eggman. One fight later, Casino Night is done. It's the Starlight Zone of this run, it's that easy. Hilltop Zone Act 1 is one of those levels that I don't really see too many badniks. Aside from the beginning spiker, there isn't too much unless you stay close to the lava pits. Even in the cave, moving to a platform when the moving ones are close is a great idea. Near the end of it, Tails gets stuck on the spring that occupies him with trying to figure out what that is. The AI really isn't as smart as you think. One loop later, and Act 1 is done. Act 2 has me going through the top route, but then I made a mistake. Tails misses the platform, kills the Rexen, so now I have to start over. Now I take a lower route to make it through this loop. Instead of using the moving platforms, I chose to spin dash and jump over those gaps to make Tails avoid enemies. I got through the cave area with the earthquake and then made it to the second cave with no encounters. Funny thing is that when I try to get Tails out of the spring trap, it doesn't really matter because he's stuck. Then it dawned upon me that if he flies on screen, he really can't defeat an enemy or interact with anything. So I made a mental note to abuse this. After that cave, we're at Dr. Eggman. After some trolling from the AI, I redo the battle and the zone is over. Mystic Cave Zone is another area where you really need to keep an eye on Tails. If not, then you'll be restarting the level so many times, since there are enough branching paths that will cause him to jump off screen. So getting him to hang onto these vine-covered levers will help a lot. The interesting thing is the flashers. From my encounters with it, they will hit first if you go for an attack, so screwing up doesn't ruin the entire run. Anyways, I went up the higher route until it forced me to go lower beyond the moving boxes with the vine lever. At this door? Crusher? I'm going with Crusher. Oh well, I waited for the flasher to get out of the way to take the lower path, and then of the two paths I was able to choose from, I made the mistake of taking the top one, only for Tails to hit an enemy off screen. Went back and took the low path, hoping to not have Tails sent backwards with the red spring. I just walked off these crates, take damage, which is fine. Then I took a risk and completely ditched that annoying fox. Thinking that he will reappear and not interact with anything, I was right. I made the climb upwards, past the crush platforms, and managed to ditch Tails again. After that, Act 1 is done. Spoiler, this is reoccurring with Act 2. Act 2 starts with Tails getting stuck in this lever and going forward. I figured I can force him to respawn, but he returns. After these swinging platforms, I was forced to drop so that way I can keep an eye on someone. I bet you can't guess who. It was actually myself. So I screwed up trying to make this jump over a flasher. That's my B. Next attempt had me moving as fast as I can after I ditched Tails, and that was the whole run. Getting Tails stuck and going as far as I can, as fast as I can, worked really well because I eventually made it to Eggman to finish Act 2. The levels that are taller are the ones to really worry about, but with that said, we're done here. To make it through Oil Ocean Act 1 means you'll be jumping over these octopuses throughout the beginning. Thankfully, you can land on the ledge and make the jumps over the individual ones. I swear, after that, I played my new favorite game in this run. How many times can I ditch Tails? He kept missing these rising platforms, so he's stuck again. Once he's gone, the speed really picks up. Thank goodness Tails jumped over these octopuses or I would have been livid. But one more later and the act is over. Not too bad, but there were some very close calls. Act 2 starts with me having to mess up this bridge part, thanks to the spring. To make matters worse, I fell into it, and what sucks is that I attempted to get back to the bridge, only to find that it's a solid platform, so... Attempt number 2. For whatever reason, I thought speeding through the level would be a good idea. It's working because Tails got sniped by an Aquas, allowing me to successfully ditch him. I wanted to mess around with the speed glitch, but I'm not really able to do much with it right now. I'm pretty sure with some practice I would have had it nailed down, but we need to keep going. After some damage boosting, there isn't too much to mention. After that, we're at the Eggman boss, so boring zone is done, let's move on to some garbage. I have quite the history with Metropolis Zone. I hate the zone, plain and simple. This is my least favorite zone in the entire series, so with that said, there are two enemies that will give me some grief. Shellcrackers, who will reach out to attack, and Slicers, who will throw these sights that will follow you for a short period of time. So the beginning of Act 1 isn't so bad. Just go forward, avoid the Asterons, even though I really want to call them Staryus. And the only thing that required a tight jump was the Shellcracker, but it is possible to completely avoid it and have him hit Tails in the process. Way to go. I took a lower route and was nearly crushed, but took the route until I came across the nut platforms. With Tails, these go by a lot faster, so he's finally useful. It took most of the game, but damn it, the kid helped. After that, I went up and dropped instead of running the nut down, and then after that, I just kept moving through the level with no real enemy encounters with the exception of this one slicer, but damage boosting helps. And at last, the act is over. Act 2 starts with a short platforming section and then moves on with the Shellcracker. After the damage boost, we took a higher route where both sides have slicers. I approached the one on the right only for Tails to hit the Shellcracker off screen. Second attempt and we go left and ascend as I ditched Tails thanks to one of the Asterons. Once I got to the Shellcracker, I was concerned that Tails was going to mess us up, or I was going to die. Sometime later, I damage boost every slicer that I came across. Then I got this really close bumper section and the level was pretty much done. On to the nightmare. Metropolis Zone Act 3. Starts with Tails getting crushed. Good on you, Zone. I don't hate you as much. Then some sweet looking maneuvering through the two exploding Asterons, and then a crush death. I don't get that. Now on to the real reason I call this the nightmare. The beginning heavily relies on Tails not hitting a single enemy off screen. Keeping an eye on the score is key, so I have to reset the level each time I see it go up by 100. Anyways, I went to the area that I was crushed and hit the spring and made another mistake at the slicer. I didn't wait for Tails to return to me, so when I passed it, he jumped at the bumper, hitting the slicer in the process. Then I thought about taking the lower route, and actually no, the beginning really sucks. There are these two slicers, so either Tails is going to hit something or you're going to die. So I said screw that, ditched Tails, and sped past the Shellcracker, and it worked. I took the highest possible route and made it to a slicer. I tried making it up the yellow bumper wall and screwed up. Tails goes for the kill. I hate this yellow rat. I spent the next few attempts trying to set up Tails to get crushed so I can just go through the areas without him. I eventually got by the opening and then screwed up landing on this platform that caused me to drop down to the area full of nut platforms. So I said screw that, plunged right into the spikes. It leads to this ramp that has a Shellcracker at the very top. This is a tough one to line up so I don't kill it. On my second attempt, out of sheer dumb luck, Tails despawns. I return to the slicer with more confidence because I can't screw up as long as Tails doesn't touch the ground. Then I jump on the small blocks, jump on top of these gears, narrowly avoided the Shellcracker. But you know what happens when you aren't prepared for an upside down slicer? Yeah, all that work for nothing. So I went back to the route that led to the Shellcracker at the end of the ramp, and I was just hanging around in that area and messing about, and then I did this. So I forced Sonic to clip through the floor and ended up in the same spot. After the fourth time, I noticed that it despawned the Shellcracker, which is exactly what I needed. I did not intend on doing that, I was just goofing off, but hey, it worked, so it seemed like nothing could ruin this, what I'm calling the luck run. Even the upside down slicer can suck the bolts behind the other one. One Tails punishment later, and the level is over. I'm gonna be honest, it didn't feel like a triumphant victory, but more of a sigh of relief. But we're finally done here. Sky Chase Zone is a bit of a drag, but has one huge upside. Tails is no longer with Sonic for the rest of the game. And I'm going to be honest, his removal from this adventure has never made me so happy. Oh, right, let's talk about the rest of the level. Since it's just a wave of Badniks, all I could do is walk around to avoid what I can. I noticed with the Nebulas that I must run to the other side of them the moment I see them. Some of them descend, which I can avoid and have no problems with, no matter how long it take. But the ones that ascend will be an issue, so I have to get past them as fast as I can. Oh, and also avoid the Balkan ride that caught me off guard. One more attempt later, and the level is over. This was the least stressful because damage boosting is such a reliable strategy. And now we are on Winged Fortress. Since I'm not allowed to hit these cluckers, I can't really take a shortcut, so that's our only true enemy. That and my lack of experience with this platforming section, it still throws me off most of the time. I can't really see where to grab on so I don't miss, so I end up falling through. Avoid the turret, avoid these two dumb clucks, and then I make it to the top of the airship, grab the speed shoes, and I hit this clucking enemy because I chose to lean. By the way, all of this is unnecessary, and you'll see why in attempt number 2. So I went through the intended path until I got to the end of the moving platforms near this propeller. Here's what you do. Damage boost through the propeller to make it to the descending and then disappearing platforms, and this cuts the level in half. Thank you, speedrunners. So then I do some vertical platforming, grab onto the crane, get flung to the right, and make it to the boss. That's right, this route will only have you encounter one enemy. With this boss fight, instead of fighting Eggman directly, we need to take care of this giant FU laser. It's funny because the small spiked platforms are the real threat. With that boss defeated, we're at the home stretch, it's on to the Death Egg. There isn't much left to the run. Mechasonic is easy to take care of with a charged spin attack, 4 hits, move out of the way, and then you can get the last 4 by jumping into him if you're lucky. I still can't do that, so I did what I could. After that, I decided to guarantee my victory and took the intended method to fighting the Death Egg robot. After a 4-minute fight, the boss is down and the run is over. So, is it possible to beat Sonic 2 without defeating a Badnik and babysitting Tails? The answer is yes. Believe it or not, but without Tails, this run could be a lot easier than the no Badnik run in Sonic 1, due to Tails being the biggest challenge. Now, I know I had to adjust the rules for the game, but I had my reasons. On top of that, I am aware that Dr. Eggman is not the only boss in games like Sonic 3 and Knuckles and Sonic Mania. To those I pissed off with the rule change, sorry, but the run used a term that is not used worldwide, so I had to make the appropriate changes. I hope you understand. So that's the run. I was not sure if this could be done, but it's possible. I also assumed that there was going to be a real dead end, but it just took a little bit of time to keep Tails in check. So if you don't hate the challenge, or me at this point, I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll come back with the series with Sonic CD. Hello and welcome back. With Sonic 2 behind us, it's finally time to take a look at one of Sonic's more unique adventures. No, not that. Not yet. It's time to travel through time with Sonic CD to find out once and for all whether or not we can beat the entire game without defeating a Badnik. Normally I would play the original release of it, but this one was not easy to do since I don't own a Sega CD version of Sonic CD, so I will settle for the Windows 95 version. It's an improved version with increased frame rate in the special stages and less slowdown in the standard stages. Yes, you could demand the Taxman and Stealth version over the original, but that's the whole point. I played the original versions to see whether or not this challenge can be done. If you're new to these videos, here are the rules. Rule number 1, you cannot defeat a Badnik, which are enemies who are defeated in one hit and release an animal. But there is a slight change in this one because they drop flowers instead of animals. If I defeat a Badnik, I must restart the level from the very beginning of the act. Rule number 2, I must fight the bosses to make progress. Plus they take extra hits so they don't really count as Badniks. Now, Sonic CD has 2 interesting additions that will make it a bit of a double-edged sword. There is a save feature, which is great, but game overs will result in restarting the entire zone. If this happens, I'll play back to the act that I got the game over in since I already beat the other one. So if I beat an Act 2, I'm not going to go and redo the entire thing with Act 1 since Act 1 would have already been finished. The second addition are these robot generators that will destroy all the Badniks if it is destroyed, so I'm going to be avoiding these. With that said, let's get started. Palm Tree Panic Act 1 starts with the iconic massive loop, right into a robot butterfly. Then I hit the red spring so I can avoid the S-tube. From what I learned, I need to do anything I can to avoid being in a ball. But I go through a tube in the background and make a Sonic-shaped hole in the land. From there I take the big ramp and reject Rosie's affection to finish the level. Act 2 has me running and taking the low route. After that, I avoid the red spring and then destroy the wall with the spin dash. I didn't want to use the full charge so that way I can avoid rolling, so I just tap the action button so I can break the wall one at a time. Unfortunately, I had to go through a tunnel, but never held down so I can get out of the ball state when I launch out. After that, it's a bit of the high road until I come across the Tamabo. Patience is key, so if they shoot a projectile, wait, and then jump over them to make it to the last tunnel and the end of the act. Since I'm not destroying robot generators, we get the bad future. Act 3 starts with me getting the invincibility and running through an enemy. One more attempt later and we make quick work of Dr. Eggman's robot and finish the level. Collision Chaos Act 1 starts with Rosie's confusion over this thing around Sonic and Metal Sonic kidnaps her. Anyways, I take the spring and go to the high route, remembering to avoid the guys flying over. After that, I take the tunnel and go even higher until I get to this area with springs and spikes. It's not too bad, but avoid the springs and the guys who are flying over to surprise us. After that, there's this area that is a perfect spot to go to the past. Since I'm not required to time travel, I decide to move on. If I didn't take too long and the guys started flying in the path I'm supposed to take. After wasting the invincibility, I take the higher route to where these robot mantises are, and they seem to have thrown their weapons already. Then I wait for this Tentile to finish pooping out bombs and go away to get through the bumpers and springs to finish the level. Act 2 is interesting because we take the low route and hit an enemy. Okay, that's not why. The real reason is that this route focuses on us going to the past because the other route has a robot mantis in a tight place. I know I can damage boost, but I don't want to do it if I don't have to. From there, I go as high as I can, but now there is this group of enemies with a robot generator in the middle. Somehow, I managed to jump and land on it without destroying it. I don't know how that happened, but I'll take it. Then it's the red springs and the higher platforms until I get to this section with glass. Thank goodness there is nothing here so I can just break them and get to an area with some mantises in the bottom route. Then it's a tiny bit left over to finish the act. Act 3 has nothing in terms of Badnik, so we win a game of pinball and it's over. By the way, if you're wondering what's up with the score, don't worry, I'll explain that one later. Tidal Tempest has me going in the water for a bit, and then going above water for most of the level. I eventually go in the water, which is around the halfway point of this level, but to play it safe, I chose to take this transparent tube, and then after that I go above the water again, and then the level is over. No bubbles required. I started Act 2 with a drop to grab a shield and rings. Then I drop more to the statue that pushes me forward. Once I jump, I think I might have hit a Badnik. Damn, I did it. Looking back at the footage, it was in a Minbo. One more time, I avoid it by not jumping into that area and jump in between these two Tagas. After that, we spring out of the water and continue through the high route again. We have to go in the water once again, but curiosity gets the best of me, and backing up gets me out of the water again. From there, go forward and the act is finished. That was unusually easy. Now we're on the third act and there's nothing to bring up except for us beating the boss earlier with this jump. I figured taking the low path in Quartz Quadrant Act 1 should give me the least amount of things to worry about, even the slope next to the spikes. Too bad I get launched into a Sasori. Still haven't destroyed Badnik yet, but damn. There have been some close calls so far. It went pretty well until I hit the future sign and took out this Kumo Kumo. Okay, I've played Sonic CD for a long time. Since when was it possible to defeat a Badnik when you run into them after going through a time sign? Time sign? I'm going with it. Next attempt, and this Kumo Kumo's web is becoming another issue, so I let it disappear, jump over it, and the Kemusi next to it. Then, a red spring flings me into a collapsing platform, and the level is over. Once again, I take a lower route to start up Act 2, but grab the shield first. Then I get stuck between a Sasori and a Kumo place. I damage boost to get by them, and immediately am sent back to take them out. These spring traps are my enemies. Next attempt, and I get rid of the shine to avoid any issues. Then I proceed to take the top route after getting the shield in hopes of not having to damage boost. I did, until I fell back to the low route. I also had to damage boost since the amount of enemies on the bottom route is crazy. Then, slope. Yeah, these things mess with my jump over the slow-moving Noro. There's a bit of waiting at this bit with the Kemusi and the Noro, so be patient. After that, I jump over the Kumo Kumo at the right time and then avoid any blind jumps to finish the act. Act 3 was a heated battle against Dr. Eggman, but that's all. Let's move on. Up to this point, the run hasn't been too difficult. Every now and then there would be a mistake made, but now is where the crap really hits the fan. Wacky Workbench has gotta be the most obnoxious zone of all the classic games. Why? The floor. Its main gimmick is the biggest obstacle in this run. Land on it and you'll be launched in the air. But when you're launched in the air, you'll be in a ball form, which means that you run the risk of hitting something. That's not even the end of it. There's also a chance of ending up on a platform that leads to a dead end. You could even end up hitting these coil things that could also do damage as well. Hitting the floor is a sign that this will not go well. One more issue is the Minimusi. They don't drop right away, so there's always the risk of defeating one or taking damage for one, which could lead into hitting the floor again. I hate this damn place, so with that said, this is how to go through Act 1. Use the platforms. Never go up and never touch the floor with this one exception right here. Every platform you will need will be nearby. There are these vents in the ceiling that will freeze you, but as long as you land back on the platform, you'll be fine. If you ever come across the semis, just let them fly past the screen. If you take your time, you'll get through it without hitting anything. Which can be said for every level, but this one, it is very important. But with that said, Act 1 is over. Act 2 isn't as simple as Act 1. For starters, you are launched into a blind jump, so hitting a Badnik is inevitable. This happened as I was trying to save myself from hitting one enemy. Attempt number 2, I avoid the launcher so I can control my jump. After going through the pass sign to get through this vent, I went to the past. Once I'm in the past, I have to avoid enemies and got to the point where I have to make a blind jump. The worst part is that it leads to this stupid rotating pole. This is the other massive obstacle in the run. You will either have to rotate up or down, but jumping launches you in either direction depending on which side of the pole that you are at. It's a leap of faith, so good luck. The attempt that worked had me going into the future. Then at the rotating poles, I hit the vent and fell to the only part that didn't have an electrified floor. As I was about to fail again, I jumped on the final pole and made it to the rising platforms. At this point I screwed up, but I managed to save myself and ended up dealing with one more set of poles. Thank goodness there are no enemies in this because it is finally done. Screw Wacky Workbench. Oh wait. One boss fight later, now it's finally done. Screw this zone. Stardust Speedway is another challenge since there are so many sections that can launch Sonic and force him to roll. Describing where I went is actually pretty tough since there are so many intersecting paths, so I'm going to do my best. Act 1 has me cautiously moving to the right, just holding right. Then I hit the pass sign, so I'll either have to burn the sign or continue and go to the past. Damage boost past the Kanabun, and we hit a red spring to go into the past. Once I hit the past, I'm surrounded by these Hotarus. Until I slowly outran them. Once I did that, I made a very well-timed jump into a stray Hotaru. So here's the thing with restarting levels with the Windows 95 version. Whenever I restart a level, I start from the beginning of that level at the same time that I'm in. I'm technically not at the very beginning of the act that I started in the present. I'm in the past. But, to be fair, the strategy is still the same.
go right until I jump on a red spring. From there, it's a little tough to say more except damage boost. All I did was run right so that way I'm never in danger of hitting an enemy, but if I do, I'll just damage boost through it. And it works, and so far I haven't hit a Badnik yet, and that's it. At the yellow spring where the spike balls launch out, jump on that and take the higher path, and Act 1 is done. This one's actually a weird one, because you pretty much have to memorize exactly where everything is just to make sure that you can get through this level, and for me, I don't really have that down, so just stay out of the ball form. That's all I can say. I chose to take the highest possible route in Act 2, and there's a Badnik flying in the tunnel, and I destroyed it. So, attempt number 2 has me going through the area where the robot generator is, and then I walked on top of a Hotaru. Dead. Third time, I took a similar path as I did the first time, except I ignored the red spring to run headfirst into a shield monitor. After that, I had a few issues with these Hotarus that led me into dropping into the lowest part of the level. I later used a peel out to go through the loop, and died again. The amount of rotten luck I've had in this beginning area is astounding. Attempt 4 might as well be attempt 1's encore. Yeah, I did that again. Fifth time, headbutt the shield monitor again, then I snuck into the low route. It seems like getting out of that beginning part as fast as possible was all I really needed. I had 1 or 2 close calls, but everything is still okay. I still hate spring placements like this, ones that catch you off guard and send you backwards. I got to this launcher and wanted to avoid going high up. I tried timing it so I could either go right or upright and hit something that would bring me back down. After that, the final stretch and Act 2 is over. Next up is the iconic Metal Sonic race. Aside from 3 near close calls with Eggman's Doom Laser, I reluctantly accept Rosie's affection, though it looks like a setup for an unprettier. Sorry, I needed my wrestling reference. And with that, the act is over. On a side note, I can see why Sega used the Bad Future setting for the boss fight in Generations. It looks really good. The lighting in the background has a really nice touch and adds so much more to the race. Anyways, let's go on to the final zone. Metallic Madness Act 1 is a straightforward path for a bit. I got the shield and proceeded to jump to the lower path. From there, it's avoid getting crushed, and a peel out to go through the empty... Never mind. Second try, and I avoid the pass sign and go through the highest possible route, thanks to this red spring. From there, I wait for these buzzsaws to get out of the way and continue on to the higher path. 1 razor blade run later, and I botch a jump on the disappearing platforms to fall through the low route again. I come across a second set of rotating platforms that allow me to go up, and I drop into the last semicircle looking part with the middle spike, question the red spring, and finish Act 1. Not too bad, especially for the final zone. Act 2 is just screaming, "Hey, I'm just like Scrap Brain Act 2" in the intro. So I used the spinning platforms to get to the highest part, and then I tried this one speedrunning trick where I would be able to peel out and then jump over most of the level. The area I tried it in would have helped out a lot, and I would be able to cut some time and avoid a bunch of Badniks, and honestly the majority of the level. After a few failed attempts, I just kept moving on. Then I got to a tube where I can go to the right, which led to another speedrunning trick that I tried. Had I been successful, I could finish the level because it would allow me to run past the goal sign. This one's a lot more difficult since I have to time the release of the peel out. I gave up and dropped onto some spikes. Once I was done guiding these platform stilts, I'm going with that. Anyways, once I get across them, Chibi Sonic! There's no more Badniks at this point, so the only goal is to not get crushed, and with that said, Act 2 is done. We're at the home stretch. I start Act 3 by jumping on the first red spring, jump the gap, and then I hit the robot beetle by accident. Remember, Bad Future. Second try, and I wait for the robot beetle to go as low as possible, and then after that, springs and bumpers and rotating platforms arrive to say hello. So did the bottomless pit. Whoever designed this level is a dick. One more attempt later, and I make it through. A little bit of patience, and I'm in the second to the last room. The boss is in my sights, and... to my disappointment, I'm stuck having to defeat these Hotarus that keep the door locked. All 3 of them. But that was a straightforward way of playing the level. Let's try something creative. Remember when I mentioned the difference in score in the Collision Chaos Act 3 segment? That's because in the run, I used a glitch that I learned as I was doing research on this video. I can't take credit for any of this, so I want to point you to a specific video. This was uploaded by Burton, and it explains a glitch that allows Sonic to phase through walls. Since this was done with the Sega CD version and I was playing the Windows 95 version, the diagonal inputs required were not as easy. But it is possible to recreate the glitch. That's great, just redo the glitch and just make it to the final boss, right? Well, wrong. No matter how many times I've tried, Sonic cannot phase through this door. And with that, we've come to an impossible obstacle, with our run coming to an end. Can you defeat Sonic CD without defeating a Badnik? The answer is no. Now, I've been told repeatedly that it would be impossible to do this, but I was never told much beyond the 3 Badniks I had to defeat. Even if it was possible to make it past through the Badniks, the final boss never spawns. Either the enemies or the door opening is linked to that final boss. I tried so many times, approached it in so many different ways, but it wasn't possible. Am I disappointed? Of course. I'd like to do my best to guarantee that it is possible, and this game is a reminder that not all games can be beaten with this challenge in mind. It also reminded me how bad Wacky Workbench is. Like, wow. What an annoying piece of shit.
Well, it looks like it's that time again to take on another Sonic game and give it a go with our little challenge. I don't have a bad hint at another title, so I'm just gonna get to the point. Sonic 3 Knuckles is a game that I never really grew up with. I have some nostalgia because, hot damn, it has one of my favorite zones in the entire series, and the debut of my favorite character in the series. When I posted an update that I was already recording gameplay for the video, I had a few responses that I wanted to address. Seems like I'm addressing something in every video, huh? Anyways, I will not be using the fan-modded editions of Sonic 3, that being Sonic 3 Angel Island Revisited, or Sonic 3 Air, and the beloved Sonic 3 Complete. As much as I enjoy those versions of the game, including Sonic 3 Air's sweet 16:9 display, I gotta stick with the official release this time. I even debated on whether or not I should play each game separately, and outside of a few minor differences to specific areas in the game, there isn't much different with the level design, so I'll be combining them. Launch base will be a little bit easier. At least I hope so. The rules are simple. Rule number 1, I cannot defeat a Badnik by making physical contact with it, releasing the animal or object inside, and receiving points for it. If I defeat it, I will restart the entire level from the beginning of the act. Rule number 2, I must fight mini-bosses and the bosses to make progress. So if the music changes, that's fair game. With the rules set, it's time to get started. Can you beat Sonic 3 and Knuckles without defeating a Badnik? Let's find out. I started Angel Island Zone Act 1 trying to get a high spot so I can grab some collectibles, but I missed the platform and landed on this monkey dude. I kid you not, that's the real name of it. So I continued to hop over this Rhino bot and went into the big ring. Alright, I'm going for all the emeralds this time. Once I'm back at Angel Island, I take a higher route and then went through the area with the 2 loops to move on to the second part of the act. I dropped down and got into another big ring, only to completely screw it up and now I've been ejected. From there, I missed the jump and went right into the water. I thought these Caterkiller Juniors would be a nuisance, but timing is key with them. They're not much of a threat on this run. I wanted to take the fire shield with me, but avoid defeating this Bluminator. It worked until I dashed into the spikes, and after that, I fight this Flamecraft to finish Act 1. I started Act 2 by going into a big ring. It wasn't a very difficult one, so now I have 2 emeralds. Afterwards, I took the route with a collapsing bridge and was careful when breaking the stone wall. I continued to take the lower route so I can drain the water, then I wait for these spinning tiles and deflected the Bluminator's projectiles. 2 loops later and I'm in the big ring. Sketchy jumps and a bunch of turns and now I have the 3rd emerald. After that I go past these platforms at the waterfall and now it's boss time. Act 2 is officially complete, then Knuckles destroys the bridge beneath me. Hydrocity Zone starts with me dropping in the water and then hitting the switch to go forward. Standard stuff. I keep going while avoiding spikes, Mega Chompers, and these Poindexters. Poindexters. Then I get to a point where there is a Blastoid. This is where things get interesting. See, I can't make progress without defeating the Blastoids since they are attached to the collapsing floor. So it looks like a dead end. Second attempt, and I swear I'm good at platforming. I swear. Hit a chopper, and now I have to restart again. I took a moment to stop at the save select screen, and in that time, I looked up a map of Act 1. That route I tried going for was the route I needed. It was the method I was approaching it with that failed. You see, I had to hit the red spring, which will take me to a yellow spring, and that's how I go up. After that, I go up because of these fans, and then avoid a Blastoid to go into another special stage. After collecting our 4th emerald, I jumped over a group of Poindexters. Then I slowly make my way through to drown, at the last possible moment to get an air bubble. One more time, full speed, stay out of a ball, and I'm surrounded by another group of Badniks. Then I spin dash and go right through a Turbo Spiker. I tried going through the loop again, but I had a Chomper on me. I actually thought rolling in a ball would defeat it, but nothing has been defeated and no points were collected. Then I hit the Turbo Spiker again. One more time, I made it through it, but I was attacked, and hit a Poindexter. At least the Spiker despawned. So this approach will make you rush yourself to get an air bubble. I mean, it's doable, so there's no problems here. And after dodging 2 more Turbo Spikers, we're at the Act 1 boss. One more attempt and the Act 1 boss is finished. Act 2, aside from having one of the best pieces of music in Sonic history, has no real obstacles in the beginning section. Then I come across Jaws, which practically has its nose in Sonic's butt. Seriously, too close. Then I went through the speed section, although it puts Sonic in a ball, though there is nothing in the path that could jeopardize the attempt. Then I have to dodge the Turbo Spiker to get to this rotating platform. Then I moonwalk to then go to this bridge. Afterwards, I avoid getting into a ball to slam face first into a Badnik. And then I go into a special stage. Emerald number 5 is ours for the taking.
and going back into the water allows me to get to the higher route, and damn these jaws. Some more platforming and moonwalking. Then we get near the end of the act. At this point, I go back so I can reach a rotating platform to get through another big ring. One more emerald to go, and Act 2 boss is here. And gone. That insta-shield is really good. I dropped into Marble Garden Zone and immediately went for the electric shield. I take the lowest possible route and I end up at the tunnel bot. On a bit of a side note, it's interesting that the game shows the axe boss early twice. Once in Angel Island and one here. Another thing to mention is that these spikers, which will make an appearance throughout the rest of the zone, have these spikes that act more like a weak spring, so not only do you not take damage, but you also avoid defeating it. Just don't use the insta-shield. Okay, back to the run. I make it to this blue spinning top and go left to these Ferris wheel-like platforms. From there, I utilize the best attribute of the lightning shield and use the double jump to make some of the platforming easier and faster, avoiding the bubbles in the process. I then go on another spinning top and let the game do its work until I slam into spikes. From there, I break through these walls until I get to this face. Now, you'd probably think, well hey, that's another dead end, better find a new way through. Not exactly. This thing takes multiple hits, and when the weak point breaks, there's no animal buddy escaping. Crisis averted. I move to the left until I find this hidden big ring to go into the 7th stage. I still don't know how I messed this up the first time, but now we have Supersonic. With our 200 plus rings, I make my descent until I reach the ramp area on the top. Somehow, it's not going up. But it might be because I'm going the wrong way. I made it over, got the fire shield, and now I'm fighting the tunnel bot. So this is the point where I'll be using Supersonic for every single boss fight. Why? Because I earned the emeralds. I'm allowed this. And with that said, the act is over. Act 2 starts with me ascending up these rings and then getting burned by Eggman, who wanted to make a dramatic appearance. After that, it was just a lot of running. No spinning, just running. Then the top that I was on leads me to this inside area. Damage boost and I summon the stairs. First, big ring, then back to the main path, once I figure out how to make it up this cliff. I let this top take me all the way to the spikes of a bubble. After getting Goomba stomped by a mantis, I ascend, then descend these sweet looking loops and turns. Seriously, this section is so much fun to watch. I tried to avoid the invincibility so I don't end up making a mistake, like, say a mantis jumps out and surprises me, and then, I don't know, say I don't use the invincibility to keep the mantis around, but then spikes and an arrow take me down. You know, a mistake. On that second loop, I jumped out on the right side so I can take a different route. I kept going on that path until the spinning top stopped near a bubble, and at that point, Eggman greets me once again, but to destroy the terrain this time. You know what I dislike? Surprises. So after a bit more platforming, I reached the boss, and since I didn't have enough rings, I had to be very careful against the jet drill pod. By careful, I mean get 7 hits before it even breaks the ground, and with that, Marble Garden Zone is over. Carnival Night starts by just running right. Honestly, the best thing about the clamor is the top acts like a spring, so there's no trouble and it's pretty cool to look at. And if I can be honest, there isn't much to run into, so it's a lot of fast movement which I've missed. One thing I will never miss are these spring setups. Ones that send you back, and these other ones that send you back and forth. How about one that does both? Then it finally happens. The stupid Batbot gets in the way, and now I have to start over. Second attempt, and I really wanted to get away from this Batbot, but a bumper and a bad jump means I'm starting over again. I want the big ring, but I can't really get into it for some stupid reason. I tried getting back and accidentally activated Supersonic. So now I can take the spinning platform to go up instead of the left. The problem now is that I have to disable Supersonic. I went to the right and there's a barrel in sight. Fun. But what's actually more fun is the last stretch of land that I was speeding through because there's nothing in the way. Then it's a fight with this self-destruct machine, and here I thought it was already inappropriate to begin with. The name doesn't help, but Act 1 is done. Act 2 begins, and I just let the level take me along until I get underwater. I go up and there's still no enemies in sight, but at this cannon, I stop to grab a bubble shield. From there, I keep going along to avoid blastoids in the process, and take a barrel to get a flame shield, and try to go to a higher route. So I use the air dash to miss the Batbot, but I hit a clamor in the process. Okay, maybe I shouldn't have moved to the highest point. This time I got past the group of Badniks and continued on my path. I really wanted this big ring, but the Batbot just takes my shield. So now I'm at the midpoint, and there's Knuckles again, chuckling away, turning off the lights. Honestly, why is he helping Eggman with the electric bill? I say waste more of it. Now that I'm in the second half, I really needed to grab this bubble shield. And you know what's even better? When there's 6 blastoids in a very tight space. The water level drops and I use the barrel to get crushed. Okay, that one's on me. One more time and there isn't too much until I get a bit higher and start moving towards the left, but more blastoids. Some 6 ceiling running action and we're back to taking damage from a clamor. Then we screw Eggman over by turning the lights back on, and now we're at the infamous Barrel of Doom. Up and down, that's all. I quickly avoid the two Batbots that were waiting for me to show up, go left, go right, avoid these flying metal demon light bulbs, and we're at the boss. After some supersonic cheesing, I take out the energy ship, and that wraps up Carnival Night Zone. Ice Cap Zone starts with a snowboarding section where I kept jumping. Then I hit a wall. There isn't too much in the beginning, it's pretty much a straightforward path, and I just need to not hit these star pointers, which are basically Orbinauts, but in Ice Cap Zone. So I'm going to call them Orbinauts to make things easier on myself. I just let the level guide me through until I jump towards this platform sticking out of the side of the wall. I got the electric shield, which is going to help me fix some bad jumps and not hit these penguinators. Once again, the level is guiding me. And then I use the lightning shield to trigger these icicles. I pushed this giant rock, and as I was riding said rock, I held down. The score hasn't changed, so we're good. Good thing I don't use the spin dash or the roll because I went head first into a penguinator. Then I tried and failed to make a jump with the super sensitive spring. Froze and nearly fell off, but just barely held on to the edge. After that, I made it to the mini boss, no supersonic this time, but the ice ball goes down fast. Act 1 is done. Act 2 starts and I immediately launch to the higher route. Then I kinda tiptoe my way through until I get through these loops. I saw a higher platform, but I wanted to play it safe, so I took this loop to the cave area. But I slowed down in the tunnel. Again, mistakes could happen. I thought I was gonna hit this penguinator, but it disappeared. Huh. I didn't even do anything and it despawned. Hey, can you see the water here? Yeah, me neither. Now that I'm out of the cave, I dodged some penguins and the last Orbinaut, and at last it's the fight with Dr. Eggman's Freezomatic. The insta-shield is great, because now Ice Cap is done. Launch Base Zone has a few traps, one being this alarm system that if I were to activate it, then I would have to deal with these Flybot 767s. Great for grinding lives and points, but useless here. I take the higher route and slowly go towards the tube and get sent off like mail. Boy, isn't that a dated comparison. From there, I avoid these Orbinauts and hit the switch. Corkies are going to be a problem because it's either the laser or the Orbinaut that will hit me. Just dodge the Ribot and the flames. I'm playing it safe by letting the level guide me and trying to avoid rolling. I am curious about this red spring, so I want to see where it goes. Ribot hits me, and now I have to get by without being burnt to a crisp or lasered to death. I took a risk with the spin dash, but it actually paid off. I slowly moved towards the right, and I went through this other tube, and on the other side, I almost made a huge mistake with the spin dash. Good thing the Snail Blaster's shell protects it. So far, I've done a good job of avoiding things, but a bad job of explaining where to go because this level layout is insane. Anyways, I activate the alarm, so guess what comes next? Nothing. There was enough space for me to go back, so it never showed up. Now I made it to the end of the act, and Knuckles throws a bomb at the floor. What's this guy's problem? Anyways, Supersonic vs. Dr. Eggman swing 'em spikes, and I already win. Act 2, and I ran forward. Unfortunately, I hit a Badnik that appeared out of nowhere. Rather than going to the beginning of the zone by restarting, I just took a death since it wasn't too far away and I didn't really go through a checkpoint. Take 2, and I damage boost. Twice. Then I go higher, and damn it! Not only do I take a hit, but I also get stuck at this Ribot, and then these Corkies are here to ruin my day even more. By the way, you can run under these Ribots without having to roll or anything. I would have never guessed that. From there, I go right, avoid being charred, and then a little more damage boosting, until I get to this piece where I have to break through to travel through water. Next, I avoid some lasers and some more Ribots, and drop down to grab as many rings as possible. It didn't help because I lost the bubble shield and my rings trying to make some progress. And it didn't take too long until I'm at the boss. I used Supersonic against Dr. Eggman's ball shooter, and I went under the 50 ring threshold needed for the transformations. Now I have to actually fight the beam rocket with normal Sonic, but it's easy. And with that, the Sonic 3 portion of Sonic 3 and Knuckles is complete. And now it's time for the Sonic and Knuckles portion of the game, but we'll leave that for part 2 of this video. Okay, let's just get into the second half of the game. Now that I've landed in Mushroom Hill Zone, there's only one thing to do. Unlock the Super Emerald Blue Sphere stages. 1 down, 6 to go. Now I'm taking a lower route until I run into 2 butter droids. I'm not too confident with that enemy placement, so I went back so I can go to a higher point. The only problem is that one of the little jerks followed me and knocked me down. So now I have to damage boost to get my way through the same 2 butter droids. Avoid the dragonflies and go higher, then I swing on this little thing so I can get to the second Super Emerald stage. I plan on getting most of them in Mushroom Hill Zone just so that way I can avoid taking any detours in later zones. Super Emerald number 2 is mine. From there I run towards the right and I take a plunge into... Okay, I made the most pathetic jump into spikes. Now I'm stuck in a really bad place. There are butter droids and mush meanies in the way, so I decide to spin dash. And it works. I'm at the High Hell mini boss, some insta-shield cheese, and Act 1 is over. Act 2, and damn it, Knuckles! Anyways, I take a bubble shield and avoided the cluckoid, and that is one extra letter from being inappropriate. Sometimes I am a bit too careful to not hit anything. I dropped down to use the momentum and ended up at another big ring for the third super emerald. I tried going lower from there to find another big ring, only to get sent into this dragonfly, thanks to the mad mole. I run into another red spring and get launched into another big ring for that damn fourth super emerald. It's expected at the second time around, huh? At first, I thought I was stuck in the spot with the butter droid, mushmeanie, and cluckoid, but all I had to do was spin dash to a higher platform, and I'm stuck again. I swear it took me a minute to figure this one out. I went back to go up, only to get sent back by another cluckoid. I'm so glad I can have these things reset, or I'd be out of options. I get past that area, but now I'm searching for another big ring. I swear there's one nearby, but I can't remember the exact location. So I said screw it and moved to the next section of the level, which I think there is one behind this cluckoid, but I can't get around it because it'll just keep sending me back. I just moved on and made it to the zone's boss, and after chasing Eggman's jet mobile, Mushroom Hill Zone is done. Flying Battery Zone starts, and I died. One more time, and there isn't too much in the way, just some techno squeaks and blasters. Jumped into the propellers and landed on top of a platform, but I took damage as if I touched it from the side. What's up with that? I waited for the electricity to take care of two of the blasters, and avoiding the other one in front of me wasn't too bad. I kept going until I found a fork in the road, and I chose to take the path that had me jumping on these tiny platforms because it's the route that I always take. Also because I can push this set of spikes and get into a big ring. We're at 5 now. This emerald is purple. I leave that section for a moment of deja vu, and now I have 6. Once I have my 6th emerald, I get to these capsules and avoid the tops of them because they more than likely have badniks inside. A little bit further and I'm at the mini-boss. It's a capsule named Gapsule. I'm sure if I was the developer I'd be like, thank you. The creative genius behind this name is a gift. Bad names aside, Act 1 is finished. Act 2 starts with me taking damage from a techno squeak, but it's alright. I take this rising platform to then damage boost through these other techno squeaks because of their amazing placement. After this open ceiling area, I jumped on the retracting platforms to take a higher route. It was a great choice because the level just carries me with no issues. That is, until the damage boosting returns with these blasters. Then I jump on these metal platforms to climb around, and I nearly ruin it with a close call. One more damage boost later and I spin dash jump to another big ring, and with that I now have all the super emeralds. After that is Dr. Eggman's attempt to kill us with a laser, followed by running and getting crushed, fighting the hang mobile, and with that, Flying Battery is done. Sandopolis starts with me having to dodge these scorps and then going up this sand wall. I missed a jump on these swinging platforms, then fell on these spikes that I've avoided a few times because there was another scorp in the upper area. Keep going right and I realized I was going backwards. Rode the falling sand up, and I went into this sand fall? Whatever, I'm going with it. The most important thing is that the sandworms kill me. Starting from the checkpoint, I made the jump on the swinging platforms, and then pushed the rock on this track. A new issue are these rockins because they are badniks disguised as rocks. Anyways, now I get to scale down this wall and ran into nothing for a bit, go forward, don't fall, and go down another wall. Then things get interesting. For some reason, I thought this falling sand led to a lower path. Nope, it led to death. Also, did you know if you had to continue, you can start from the very last checkpoint? I had no idea. After the sand, I had to damage boost through the scorp. Make that 2. Okay, 3. I went through the double loop and the red spring to scale down a third wall. I wasn't sure if I was near the end, so I chose to try getting 50 rings at this bonus stage. Good thing is that it was the slots one. Oh, that was quick. Turns out I was at the end because I had one more wall to scale down until I fought the Guardian. Act 1 is over. Act 2 is going to be an experience. Anyways, I avoid the sandworm and took a detour for a lightning shield. After I hit the capsule, the fun really begins. After taking a while to slide downwards, then was crushed. Get hit by the scorp, and then just ran forward. There isn't much until I hit this cork that holds the sand in. Unfortunately, as I scaled this section, I was not able to turn the lights off, and the Heudoros are now after me. Oh, and I triggered hypersonic by accident. I figured the scorp was going to get in the way, but I guess you could just jump over it since the tail doesn't count as part of its hitbox when it takes damage. I almost landed on another scorp. Thankfully I had a high enough jump to keep going forward. And to keep my ring count up, I got into another checkpoint and went into the bonus stage. I didn't get 50, but it's fine. And now I'm near the end. Opened up one of the last areas, and now I'm at the egg golem. There's no fight here, but Sandopolis is now done. Dropping into Lava Reef Zone, and it only takes around 30 seconds to hit a fireworm. One more time, and I did it again. This time it was a Toxin Mister, though it did take me about a minute to realize what I did because I thought I hit a different enemy. Attempt number 3, and attempt number 4, and it finally dawns upon me that the Toxin Mister gives points. Attempt 5. Good thing is that these turrets don't give points or drop an animal. took the wheel elevator down, then had an Iwamodoki. This drilling bot drops down and I can't find out the name of it. Seriously, I can't. Oh well, we drop into the next part and wait a second. The Iwamodoki exploded. An animal popped out. The score is visible, but I earned none of it. What's going on? I mean, I guess I earned none of it, so it doesn't hit all 3 requirements in the rules. On top of that, I didn't make direct contact to cause it to be destroyed, because it kind of sets off like a bomb on its own. From there, I climbed the steps, changed shields. After the checkpoint, I screwed up once again. I'm at this unbreakable wall and I wanted to air dash through it, but I changed my mind at the very last moment, one more time, and it was safe to dash through. I panicked for nothing. I avoided getting burned, thanks to the shield. Neat. Went between the toximisters and was crushed. I swear I'm good at this game. Anyways, I took a risk by spin dashing and then went down this elevator where there is another toximister in a very tight space, and unfortunately damage boosting doesn't work. For a while, I thought that was it. I thought I was at a dead end. I was so close. I was in the second half of the game, and I thought all of it was over. So I chose to look at another map, and to my surprise, there's another route I could take. This one is made more for Knuckles, but it looks like we can play as Sonic here with some careful platforming. So at this fork in the road, all you have to do is let the fire room go by, and just go through it. In this room with rising and lowering lava, you have to get to the last platform before the lava goes too low. I learned that the hard way. From there, I went through the breakable wall, and now I accidentally spin dashed under the toximister. Pressed the switch, and damn it. So yeah, you can spin dash under another Badnik. I feel like I know less about this game the more I play it. So going through my first route was fine. Spin dash, now I'm at the mini boss. Cheese the heat hands, and Act 1 is finally done. Oh boy. This act took me roughly 40 minutes because I was not aware of what I would deem to be crucial information. I am salty about this. Anyways, let's move on. After the lava cools off, Act 2 begins with me dodging fire and spikes. After the moving platforms, I jump on them so I can go a bit higher. It's just a more familiar route for me. Swung myself up, grabbed some free rings, and I'm just taking the straightforward path and started grabbing rings to save myself. Went to the higher path, and then I saw this spiked moving platform section, and then I spin dashed under the toximisters. Fling myself up again, and I upgrade to a flame shield with this secret room in the wall. I even get a big ring with this other hidden room. Moving on, there are these spikes that go in and out of the foreground, which are dumb. Then a small climb up to lose the shield. I wanted to avoid spinning or air dashing, but it failed. Anyways, with that taken care of, I'm now at Knuckles. Thanks, my guy. I wanted to fight Eggman's Hot Mobile, but Hypersonic is harder to control. Next idea, try to get into the bonus stage, and it's gone. Third time's the charm. Thanks, Flame Shield. And with that, Lava Reef has been given its merciful end. Welcome to Hidden Palace. There are no Badniks here. Fight Knuckles. Foreshadowing. He loses the Master Emerald. Hidden Palace is now over. Getting beamed up starts Sky Sanctuary Zone, and these egg robos are the only enemies I have to avoid. Thank goodness. The biggest problem is this one that will surprise you, so spin dashing will be kept at a minimum. It's only a small amount of the level to travel until I reach the mini-boss. It's Mecha Sonic in the Egg Mobile, and it emulates the very first boss in Sonic 1. I then have 2 close encounters. The second one had a platform that lowered, so I could dodge it with ease. Had a little bit more to go, and it's Mecha Sonic emulating the flying Eggman boss from Sonic 2. More of Sky Sanctuary to go, and then getting surprised before I reach the true fight with Mecha Sonic. The insta-shield is so broken, and I wouldn't have it any other way, because now Sky Sanctuary Zone is done. Death Egg Zone starts with a spike bonker surprising me. Then I grab this handle only to get bounced into electricity. I hate that design choice. From there, this chain spike takes my bubble shield away, and from there the high route seems fine. Well, it's fine until I had to take a risky jump, but it was worth it to stay on that higher path. Now I have to wait for this machine to create a path where I can make progress, or else I'll just be going in circles. At the red spring, I get some rings and a free electric shield. I make it to this conveyor belt, and that shield will make it easier to dodge the projectiles, until I tried it again. After the second moving conveyor platform, I jump over the checkpoint in case I die, and hit these 6 buttons, and this is actually much more fun than it should be. From there are these boring things, and damage. Good thing I can skip the second ring shooter and make it to this mini-boss. The red eye goes down and Act 1 is done. We're so close. Act 2 starts with a stupid spring and near death. Then I'm flipped upside down and got stuck in this tunnel, but I wanted to go back for the monitors because of that electric shield. Thankfully, all you have to do is just go down and you get another electric shield. After that, I go towards the right and stupid spike bonkers. I then take these stairs down to the ceiling. Okay, I actually wanted to make the sentence sound like I was saying it through the perspective of Sonic, and it's pretty dumb. transported once again, and I had to damage boost because the Badnik was a little too high. If I had the electric shield, I could risk it with the double jump, but I lost it some time ago. Gee, I wonder why. After 2 sets of conveyor belts, I jumped into the spikes and died. Turns out all I had to do was run. I was just overthinking it. I kept going and went through one more tube to nearly make a mistake. After the next checkpoint, I jump a little too close to the enemy, and after a damage boost, I then get into another ring shooter. It's a shame because I was actually able to skip this one, but not the next one. Anyways, I grabbed myself a lightning shield, and at last jumped over the final Badnik in the game to get to the boss, the Death Ball. I was 1 ring short, but at least I can be protected. With it taken down, it's now time to fight the Great Eggman Robo. Apparently we're the mob because we're taking out its fingers, and then we have a head-on fight against it. Actually, I'm surprised we're not taking out its kneecaps next. Anyways, he goes down, and Act 2 is now finished. And now I claim my prize. 1 more boss fight in the Doomsday Zone. Then death. After the second try, Dr. Eggman goes down, the Master Emerald has been retrieved, and Angel Island returns to the sky. And with that, our run is over, and Knuckles, go away. So, can you beat Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles without defeating a Badnik? The answer is yes. This was quite the journey. I will say that the Sonic 3 portion of the game is much more difficult than the and Knuckles portion. And keep in mind, the enemy and object placement was altered in Launch Base Zone. So I'm assuming that Sonic 3 would be even more difficult if I wasn't playing this with the and Knuckles expansion on it as well. Also, the amount of enemies I was able to spin dash under was astounding. And if you were curious about the amount of restarts that I had to do for Lava Reef Act 1, it was 8. It was 8 complete restarts just to get through Act 1. The record still goes to Wacky Workbench Act 2, but I'm not going to get started on that.
Sonic Mania is a game that needs no introduction. For those who don't know, this 8-year-old game is something I dedicated this entire channel to at one point. Playing Mania mode, Encore mode, mods, earning achievements, discussing, disgracing, and so much more. But remove the disgracing bit. I've been able to be seen by a larger audience, made many great friends, met so many talented modders, and I've had so many great opportunities thanks to this game. Easiest way to put it, Sonic Mania is one of the most important games I have ever played. This video has been a long time coming, and I hope I do it right, so let's go. Hey everybody, and welcome to a new Sonic Without Defeating a Badnik, the online challenge series that will not have a self-deprecating joke description for this video only. Today's a special one because it's a game that I've spent hundreds of hours on, and a game I loved so much I quadrupled down on it. Xbox, Steam, Nintendo Switch with the physical edition, and the Epic Game Store version. The base game was free, and I had enough store credit for the DLC, so why the heck not? I haven't really played this version much, so let's try it out. And if we're going by version numbers, it is the most up-to-date version of Sonic Mania Plus, with the exception of Netflix, but I don't want to talk about that. Anyway, let's get into the rules. In the game, I cannot defeat a Badnik, which means attacking an enemy, destroying it to get points, and releasing the animal inside. If I do, then I'll be forced to restart the level. To make progress, bosses and mini-bosses will be excluded from the challenge. The challenge ends when Sonic is teleported thanks to the Phantom Ruby, or if I give up. No debug mode or cheats, so let's go. I have tried making this video 2 other times, so I have an idea of where I'll struggle, but it has been a while since I've last played the game, and I have my work cut out for me. I'm sure it was the case for the other 2 creators who have given it a shot as well. Shoutouts to Nathaniel Bandy and Spiky Spikes. With that said, allow me to be the 3rd person in history to ask this question. Can you beat Sonic Mania without defeating a Badnik? Let's find out. We start in a very familiar Green Hill zone. Dodging the Motobugs, Choppers, Crab Meats, and Buzz Bombers is pretty easy. Things take an interesting turn when I chose to take the lower path after the S-tube. From there I had a damage boost past a trio of Choppers, and now I'm over a pit of spikes. For some reason I assumed there would be more Buzz Bombers, but that's in the original. Still, it's good to play it safe. The rest is similar to Sonic 1's Green Hill Zone Act 2, so I went into the big ring for our first Chaos Emerald. From here we take on the DD Wrecker to go to Act 2. I took the top path in Act 2 because it's going to lead me into another big ring as soon as this Buzz Bomber gets away. That's better. After stubbing my toe and getting beat up by the neutrons, I wasted some time by assuming I knew the location of another ring. At least I got a shield. At this point, running forward is all I can do. And then I screwed up by spin dashing. See, I'm trying to take this top path to get to another ring. It also has the fewest problematic Badniks, so it's a safe option. I made it back on the return trip to go face to face with the Motobug. After grabbing the second emerald, it's time to defeat the Death Egg Robot. Unlike the Sonic 2 version, this one's a cakewalk, and Green Hill Zone comes to an end. Act 1 of Chemical Plant Zone begins and I dodge the red spring and the grabber. I let the level take me forward until I get to the shifting blocks. Before getting out of the water, I need emerald number 3. There isn't much else until the amoeba droid to finish the act. Act 2, on the other hand, is a lot of fun with this bouncy goop or whatever the heck it's called. After dodging the Caterpillar Jr., I hopped into the left side of the clear tube to take off. There isn't much going on except for being picked up by a grabber. Since they explode after grabbing Sonic, I'm not going to count this. And there's also no points. Or an animal. Oh. After latching onto the wall, I made a detour to get the next Chaos Emerald. At one point I wasn't paying attention, so now I have to wait because I grabbed an invincibility box. I jumped over one last Caterpillar Jr. to avoid the grabbers, and I skipped out on the next emerald for reasons I'll get into later. But now, I get to play Puyo Puyo. I'm so glad this game doesn't have the second level of the Genesis version, or I would be in trouble. But to explain Act 2, there's a lot of empty space and a lot of room to work with, so we're done here. Let's move on. Studiopolis Zone starts with a mic drop. Wait, that's the real name of it? Okay, that's pretty cool. When there's one, they're easy to avoid. Same goes for the Shutterbugs and the Tubanaut. From there, the level just goes on until I get into the popcorn machine, followed by the Hornet. It's high class. I got nervous with that because the Shutterbug was right there and I didn't want to land on top of it, but it was safe. One Hornet with the janky camera movement later, and I'm fighting the Heavy Gunner to finish Act 1. That was pretty easy. I start bouncing on orbs to start Act 2. But the Tubanaut stands in the way, and unfortunately, damage boosting is going to be the way to go here. From there, I tried taking the top route, but I fell down. There was a point after the mic drops where I'm supposed to break the lid to move forward, but these Shutterbugs are there, and that is not going to end well. So we gotta go back. The trick is to get onto the other platform so I can switch which layer I'm on, and from there, the level's pretty much over. I'm only dealing with mic drops at this point, and they're not low enough to force me to deal with them. So, after one fight with the Weathermobile, Studiopolis has come to an end. What is that buzzing sound? Flying Battery would start as a nightmare, but like the original, timing is everything. The Techno Squeaks are the only threat because of their speed, but they're not overly crowded. At this point, I'm playing the level normally. Getting the Lightning Shield would have been important for the capsule near the exit, but I had to jump on the edge of it instead because I lost it. After a malfunctioning button, I lowered all the way down. There's a close call on the way to the small missiles, but we're at the big squeeze. Yes, I know there's Badniks, but it is a boss fight, so they don't really apply to the rules. Without the Lightning Shield, this is actually required to reach the boss because he's a little too high up. And as the boss fight continues, the room gets smaller and smaller. Trust me, I would have loved to have figured out how to do this without defeating a Badnik. Not so much because it's part of the rules and every single thing must be done that way. This is a boss fight, so it would have just been nice to show off what I could do. Act 2 starts with a little anxiety because these Techno Squeaks are getting really close. My least favorite being the one near the lid of this tube. I went for the top route, by the way. Bringing the Lightning Shield was great because I could double jump over these cluckers. If I didn't keep it, I would have had to go to the bottom route. Another benefit is deflecting their egg bullets, so I don't have to worry about damage or anything. That is until I didn't commit when I was running upside down. A lot of the level is just avoiding the many cluckers and their eggs. Thank goodness for the bubble shield. After a lot of nothing happening, I lose my shield at this clucker, but after that the level is over. Really quick, if you struggle against the Spider-Mobile, just jump at him before he reaches the absolute top where he can start his attack, and then send him into the spikes when you're able to. It works every time. He won't do a thing. Press Garden starts with a scare as I almost jump into a dragonfly. Thankfully the shield's there because I needed to damage boost through the juggle saw. The splats near the spawner was a problem because I needed to break the glass button. Now I have to start over. I dropped down on the second attempt and the splat spawner that I came across is in a more open area, so it's a little safer. With the lightning shield, the splats in the next area are much easier to get around. From there, I made the climb up and it's business as usual. Except for a damage boost. And there isn't much else to say. I had a very easy time leading up to the Shiver Saw, and Act 1 is over. Act 2 begins with taking the top route, and it worked out until I was frozen and went down the slope. Things go bad when I drop down and end up in a dead end past this point with the big ring. See, there's a big ring there, which is why I'm using it as a point of reference. There's also a checkpoint, but still, it makes the most sense to me. To get through the ice, I'll need to be frozen and slide through it, which is not a big deal, but then when you realize the Woodrow is in the way, I'm gonna have to find another path. I got back to the checkpoint and I could use the slope to fling myself onto another path, but on my first try I screwed it up. On the third attempt, I went to the absolute top of the level to grab a flame shield. This shield makes for a great icebreaker and it's gonna help me out a lot. I didn't fall off after the big ring checkpoint this time, and I kept running forward until I lost the flame shield. A little bit of climbing later and I'm at the heavy shinobi to wrap up Press Garden. Before I get into this zone, I just want to say how frustrating video errors can be in this series. If there's some kind of tiny issue like this large empty space in the recording for the first two zones, that's not a big problem, I can fix that in editing. The issue with this one is going to need a bit of an explanation. When I record retro games or I record something like Sonic Mania, I try to use an integer scale of their resolution. And if you know a thing or two about retro games or retro-inspired games, they don't fit into the 1080p display. This is what you think I would be recording at, but it actually looks like this. And to achieve a recording without any blank spaces, I have to adjust OBS's canvas size, which isn't bad until it starts changing the output resolution and they no longer match. Which means my footage is blurry, and it's going to be like that for a little bit. I know what some of you might be asking, well, why don't you just go and record it again? In a challenge video? You're going to see why I won't do it. But first, start a speedway. Act 1 starts with going up these pulleys, but first, I wait for the Hotaru to go away. There are going to be areas where I'm stuck in a ball, so I'm going to need to get out of that as fast as I can. Before I continue, I want to go over this capsule thing I hit. They give no points, and they're not classified as enemies, so we could just keep going. Turns out the path I took next sent me into a big ring that I've never seen before, but I'm gonna play it safe and skip it this time. A bit further down, and now I have a Hotaru on my trail. I was only able to get away from it by getting into these rolling areas as it started using its attack. After luring the Dango to get out of the way and letting the Kanabun pass, it's time for the Hotaru High Watt. This was one of the bosses that people were telling me about, and if it wasn't for the fact that I've already explained things in Flying Battery, I was still going to say it's part of the boss fight, but there is a way to get past it without fighting the Hotaru. You just have to let them do their attacks and go away. Eventually, the Hotaru High Watt's going to spawn, and that's when you can actually fight. With that taken care of, it's time to go into the future and into the next act. I'm taking what was the optimal under 1 minute route for Act 2, which requires laying low for the most part. It's pretty empty until I get to the point with the first set of loops. Before the second set, there's a close call with the Dango, but I had just enough room to avoid it with my jump. I stopped at the end to hit the spring to avoid going into a route that'll take longer, and it's going to have more enemies, so saved myself on that one. If you want a real close call, there are these red springs that sent me into a Kanabun. If it had spawned sooner, I would have had to restart the level, or find another path. And it's pretty much over at this point, but now it's time for Metal Sonic, and obviously, I've made this point twice already, but for the sake of repetition, it's a boss fight. But that's not the thing I wanted to make a point about. See, in the original release of Sonic Mania, there was a cool glitch where you could skip over the entire first phase of the fight, meaning that you can go into the second phase, and even then the second phase was very different. Alright, hold on. So I was looking for footage of this skip so I can say how impossible it is, but there is a new method to pull this off. Shout out to Argic's tutorial, by the way. If you have Supersonic, you can do a one-tap spin dash to get stuck in the ceiling and mash the jump button to get through to get past that first phase. It's something I could have tried, but at this point I only had 5 emeralds and I was under the assumption I was going to need to get into a special stage for another reason. I'll get into that later. I'm going to stick to my point from before. It's a mini boss, but just so you know, if you have Supersonic by this point, it is possible. Hey, when you fight the first phase, you have to hit the Silver Sonics to do damage. When they stand, they free an animal and this weird electric thing that can rise up to hit Metal Sonic. When you hit Silver Sonic when he's in a ball, what happens to the animal? Nothing spawns and the little robot disintegrates to... Oh my god. That is dark. Can you beat the game without defeating a Badnik? Never mind that, I think Sonic has committed an actual crime. While I think about the implications of this fight, Phase 2 goes off without a hitch and Stardust Speedway is over. I actually thought the Capybaras were going to be a problem since they blend in a bit better with the capsules and they're the smallest enemies in the zone, but nope. They were not an issue at all and I had to constantly check the score as I was playing. Now, let's get into the argument starter. Aquatic Acceleration Zone begins with using the hook on the far right to go up and let the level take me through. The first enemy to give me a problem is the Turbo Spiker. With the Retro Engine, I have to wait a while for them to go off screen and despawn. After this is a scary situation with the Mega Chopper, but moving left and right repeatedly takes care of that. The next scary bit is the boat that has a Buggernut chasing me. Going in the water helps a little bit, but I messed up trying to avoid another Turbo Spiker. There was a ledge that turned it around and I did not anticipate that. I made the same mistake going back, but this is how I found out the Buggernuts do not follow you through the loops. On the third attempt, I brought a bubble shield with me, and I moved on until I got into the next boat with a Buggernut. Getting out of this was dumb because I lost my bubble shield, dove in the water to get another, only to find that it had a yellow spring that sent me right back into the Buggernut. And the only thing that really saved me was the edge of the boat. After one more boat and Turbo Spiker, the level's pretty much over, and I fight the egg dive. That's just Eggman in a scuba suit getting shredded by an impeller. Okay, real talk, are the devs okay? Like, Taxman, Stealth, everybody who worked on this, are you guys okay? This game's getting a little more sinister the more I think about it. Oh, and before we get into the next act, I just found out the name of the zone is because it's a town with water, which is pretty mind-blowing. Moist Municipality Zone Act 2 starts with climbing up the spinning platform to the top path. I made sure to stay on that top path as long as possible, and it worked out, except for this damage boost. But I took damage first. That sprite don't lie. And it's at this point where the Turbo Spiker starts moving backwards after hitting part of the loop. If you've played Mania, you'll know the rest leading up to the next Turbo Spiker is free, so go as fast as possible because all of the Badniks stay out of the way. The next section would have been the same, but I messed up and dropped on a point Dexter. The return trip goes without any issue. From here I dodged some Jaws, a Turbo Spiker, finally acknowledging the Moonwalk, and fight the Laundromobile to get out of this one. I'll be honest with you all, Mirage Saloon Act 1 is probably one of the hardest levels in the Sonic Without Defeating a Badnik Challenge series. These Voltrons will follow you for a large portion of the level. As you go along, they'll introduce Armadilloids. If you can't bunch the Voltrons together, you're not going to make it. If you're playing Sonic Mania on the Epic Game Store, dying will kill the music and give you the wrong time of day. I could have sworn this was patched out. After many attempts, I made it through, but I have learned from the first time I made it through the auto-scroller section. Those Voltrons are still there, and there's a very good chance that they'll be defeated if I get launched out of this gun. This is where the big ring comes into play. Yes, I am getting my 6th Chaos Emerald, but I'm also despawning the Voltrons. And the level is pretty much over. After the auto-scroller, I fight the Uber Caterkiller, and we can move on to Act 2. Hey, it's me from a future recording again. After skipping the Metal Sonic encounter, I just had to see this for myself. Can I do this while still having all of my emeralds? This means I played this level again with all the emeralds, and yeah, it does work. Even better if you can despawn some of these enemies because they are super annoying and they will never stay off of you. But I still went for the big ring to get the required number of rings so I can go through the Blue Spheres level, or Pinball, depending on whatever you have unlocked. This will also despawn the Voltrons, and I can beat the Uber Caterkiller as Supersonic. Does that invalidate everything I played between Stardust Speedway and here? No. I was going to play the levels as safe as I possibly can, so I was never going to utilize Supersonic outside of bosses and mini-bosses. But now that I have that out of the way, and I've played this level with the challenge twice, I never need to return to this act ever again. For the first time, I was relieved, and I was really happy about that. But now I'm just pretty damn annoyed. I am satisfied with what I found out, so let's keep going. Act 2 starts with a slow jog past the Voltron, and I avoid using the flipper to get through. But it doesn't get me too far as I'm forced to use another one to pop the glass and pinatas. The Roller Mark II caused me to panic a bit, and I knocked out a Bumpalo by accident. Hang on, let me clear that up a bit. Back at the same spot, I pushed the roller away and I took the path on the right. From there, I'm sent to the battle against the Heavy Magician to finish Mirage Saloon. That one's actually not that tough when you get through the auto-scroller. Oil Ocean Act 1 is much simpler than it leads on. For one, the Octus, or Octi, can be cleared with a jump. Once I saw the big ring, I had to go and get the final Chaos Emerald. Since Supersonic is a threat to the challenge, I'm only going to reserve him for mini-bosses and bosses. I was convinced that the Flame Shield would mess me up, so for whatever reason I had the Octus take care of it. I kept going until I made it to another one in a tiny space, and sadly I needed to damage boost to get through it. After that it's pretty easy since there's not many enemies throughout the level. But that didn't stop me from hitting something near this platform that shot up. I just had to wait for a moment, and it would have been done, which is what I did on the next attempt. I defeated the Meter Droid to finish Act 1. One thing to mention, since I went through a big ring in the previous attempt, when I come back to it, it's not going to be there. That's just how Mania works. So, I made a decision to take the exact same route to make it fair. Let's move on. Act 2 begins with me getting the Fire Shield, and it's about as standard as a route as I was able to play. Take the first balloon launcher, avoid suffocation, slide between the Octus and the Soul, and at the checkpoint where I could drop into a submarine and a big ring, I opted for the path on the bottom right instead. Though there was a mistake that led to me dropping and damage boosting past 3 Octi. Look, I know it's called Octus, but I went with Octi because octopi is plural for octopus. By the way, staying on the ledge of a small platform does work, so Act 1 could have been done a lot easier. I made my way through the final submarines and defeated the Mega Octus after a death. Let's get out of Oil Ocean. Crashing and damage boosting past the Rexon is how I start Lava Reef Zone Act 1. The fireworm that follows gives me more than enough room to get through, and you might have caught something that exploded off screen. That was an Awamadoki. In Sonic 3 Knuckles, these guys hide under a rock and will detonate after a few seconds. They used to have this 100-point graphic, and that was considered a glitch. All the posts that I found looked into it, and they all claimed it was a glitch as well. But this one from Sonic Retro makes a comparison that I never considered. Remember the Astrons from Sonic 2's Metropolis Zone? Those were indestructible enemies that explode and do not award the player points. Even better is that they don't release an animal upon exploding. So because of this technicality, The run is still alive. The tunnel bot breaks through the ground and I'm able to go over the Rexons in the lava pit. At the spiked crusher, I went and grabbed the lightning shield and got crushed. Thanks, Mania. From here, I let the level take me as I make one little skip thanks to the shield. Too bad I had a damage boost through the double Rexon, because it would have been great to have Supersonic. It's also a good thing that the game is not exactly like Sonic 3 and Knuckles with the placement of Toximisters, otherwise this would have been a problem. After the checkpoint is the fight against the tunnel bot to finish Act 1. Act 2 starts like all other playthroughs, but with the fork in the road, I went for the top path. It's not too bad. The fireworm goes up a bit when it turns around, making that easy to get through, but I was sniped by Nawamadoki and crushed. Alright, cool. On the way back, I grabbed the bubble shield because I know I'm gonna need it, and now I'm at one hell of a dead end. The 2 Toximisters. It doesn't have the same hitbox as Sonic 3 and Knuckles, or I would just spin dash underneath it. I might need to go to the bottom route on this one. After squeezing past the fireworms and nearly dying in the lava, I chose to avoid the Toximister to go up and be tricked by 2 platforms. Okay, look, I don't want to talk about it. There's a new segment where I need to hit a spring, jump to the area above me, but I was just struggling for the reason of trying to play things safe. And after all that effort, I was in a small hallway with a Toximister. I couldn't get past it in time. I said screw it, walked as fast as I could into the Toximister, missing the mist somehow, and was able to successfully damage boost with a handful of rings left over. Things were going pretty well and aw crap, the Rexon. When I came back, I was not aware with how much I would need a damage boost to get over the lava pit. It led to a big ring and a surprise spike, which I really didn't appreciate. From here, the level is over with a small climb, followed by a fight against the Heavy Rider and his Motobug Jimmy. Lava Reef Zone is done. Act 1 of Metallic Madness is pretty safe, all things considered. Jump over the Mechaboo, grab the shield, and stick to the high route. At this point, my worst enemy is going to be my skill, which isn't an issue here. In the background, these Pobies are going to be a little annoying, but let their maces swing away and you're good. At least that's how it worked for me. The Scarabs are going to be a little scarier since they're in these cramped spaces, but a good jump will take care of them. Then there's one with the ring box, and I didn't anticipate this. I actually thought I screwed up and I was going to need another path, but a good jump clears it and earns me 10 rings in the process. After that, I go in and out of the background twice, fight the Egg Pistons Mark II as Supersonic to finish Act 1. The second act had me using the same strategy. Go up, which actually didn't work as well as it should. Using the slope allowed me to bypass the Pobee completely, and I don't think I came across a single enemy in the first mini section. Going into the second one was also easy because the enemies were behind a wall, meaning that I had zero contact with them. I only saw one Mechaboo in the top path, and the level's pretty much over with that. One fight with the Gotcha Pandora later, and we're on our way to the final zone. The beginning of Titanic Monarch didn't go as smooth as I would have liked, but that's because I was trying to be careful. The Turbo Turtles are going to be an issue with their fans, but the one that had me the most worried were the Sentry Bugs. They have attacks that'll track you, and if you wait too long, you're going to take damage. It's smooth sailing for a bit at the shield, and I go up to damage boost past the Ball Hog. At the dual Ball Hog, I messed up by walking backwards a little bit and jumping. I just needed to stop and reposition myself a bit to get through, which is what I did on the next attempt. When I grabbed the next shield, I was trying to avoid making the Sentry Bug aggressive, so it looks awkward as hell. I wanted to switch up my shield, so I went left of this loop, grabbed the shield and the big ring, and went to the right after that. The shield is going to protect me from the electricity, which is something I don't get to demonstrate thanks to the Turbo Turtle. I would have been done here, but a rookie mistake took out a Flasher Mark II in the process. I made it back to fight the Crimson Eye as Supersonic to finish Act 1. We are almost there. Titanic Monarch Act 2. The beginning is going to have a Sentry Bug to keep me from getting on the gear easily. I messed up a few times because I wanted to grab the shield as well, so that was my fault. From the first warp, I take the top left corner, which was a bad idea. The Ball Hogs are okay at the start, and I had to damage boost past the Flashers to get through. After the Sentry Bug is where I come across my issue. This Ball Hog is too high up to jump over, and there isn't a high enough platform to make the jump possible, so I knocked it out. I'll get back to this one in a bit. On another attempt, I went to the route on the top right. This one is free as I only had to use the electric orbs to get up, and there's only one Ball Hog in the way. Next was the route on the bottom right. My biggest threat was the Sentry Bugs, but the level is designed in a way where you're moving faster than the attacks will be able to lock onto you. So that wasn't too hard. The bottom left is next, and it's another free area. The Sentry Bugs can't catch me, and the Ball Hogs are in very open spots. This time, I can take the alternate exit and grab a lightning shield with it. Obviously, I messed up again at the Ball Hog at the top left route. Man, if I paid for this game, I'd be pretty annoyed right now. I'm just kidding, you can jump out of this. It takes 2 more failed attempts to find out that damage boosting off the little bombs would work. That was the only real obstacle in this act, which means I can get to the end. Now we're choosing the Phantom Egg battle with Supersonic to go to the Phantom King and Kleptomobile battle to finish the game. So, can you beat Sonic Mania without defeating a Badnik? The answer is yes. Man, that was a wild ride. From user error to OBS being OBS, to to Mirage Saloon Act 1, the Awamadokis, and that one ball hog. I think I did a great job this time around. Going for the Metal Sonic skip was a lot easier than I expected. I had my fair share of mistakes, but it didn't take long to get back to Metal Sonic and I could go as fast as I wanted to, because Stardust Speedway Act 2 was actually much easier than I expected it. I was just tiptoeing around for no reason. Mirage Saloon Act 1 sucks. I really hate the Sky Chase segment. I hate it, and I never have to play it in this challenge ever again. So, I win. I explained this when I was playing the Sonic Mania randomizer recently, but it's a little tough to approach this game and not play the way that I was used to. That muscle memory kicks in, and that's when the mistakes were being made. As experienced as I am with this game, and for the many hours that I've invested in it, I clearly had a lot more to learn. I don't have any more I can say except this game's awesome. It's still one amazing video game, and as I said at the start of the video, one of the most important video games I have ever played. One day I'd like to take a critical look at the game in the form of a review, but that's a video for another time, and I think that'll just about do it. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching this special edition of Sonic Without Defeating a Badnik. What are your thoughts on Sonic Mania? Let me know in the comment section down below, or comment anything really. If you're new, feel free to subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon, and if you enjoyed the video, give it a like. I don't have a whole lot else to shill except for my social medias, which are in the description down below, but also come by the streams. youtube.com/GottaBeFrank. I mean, hell, you're here right now. And it's also on my Twitch page, twitch.tv/GottaBeFrank. Just remove the E because somebody else took that username. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful and safe day, and I'll catch you in the next one. But until then, take care.